Hello friends, James Raaj here from Raaj Academy. In this video, we are going to see the question paper analysis of the exam which was conducted on 1st October 2020. So this is the morning session question paper. So in this video, you will find question number 1 to 50. In the next video, you will find between 51 to 100. This is the first time in the last 9 years that I could not write the examination. So in this video, you are going to see how we could have attempted the examination. What are the strategies, tips and methods I would have used? You are going to see that. First, you have to understand, this question paper required thorough knowledge of the subject. Those who believe that just a superficial study of the subject would have helped them, it is of no use. There were questions which required your thorough in-depth study. There were questions which required understanding social, political, ideological background of the age, which would have helped you even doing this chronological questions, match the following question. There were questions which required your intelligence guesswork. Yeah, for that you need a thorough preparation or the mastering the subject. And there were some questions which required your just common sense. So with this, you could go and see the detailed analysis, how I could have done if I had written this examination. Let's deal with question number 1. You can see the first question from Hazlitt's My First Acquaintance with Poets. So there is a quotation. They have given the quotation and asked about this quotation, whom is this said? Right? And the core of this quotation is the idea of a man of a genius. To do this question, first we have to understand that when we prepare romantic literature, we must remember that William Hazlitt was a contemporary of Coleridge and Wordsworth, because all of them were born sometime around 1770s to 1775. Yeah. And my first acquaintance with poet deals with Coleridge and Wordsworth only. It cannot be, there's no mentioning of Byron or Shelley. So it must be Coleridge and Wordsworth. Now, such a great line like idea of a man of a genius, in fact, who knew that and he exemplified that. And here we have to apply our general idea about out of Coleridge and Wordsworth, who was a better poet. Basically, it was believed that Wordsworth was more popular, but better poet was always Coleridge, yeah, because of his, the way he conceived ideas, the way he conceived the poetic process. All this is exemplified in his work written in 1817, Biography of Literaria. And this work, My First Acquaintance with Poet, was written sometime around 1823. Yeah. And where he mentions that first time he met Coleridge sometime in 1798-99. Yeah. So with this, we can conclude that this kind of greatness, about a man of a genius, Hazlitt must have said about Coleridge only. Yeah. Though Coleridge, Wordsworth also wrote some critical work, but that was to justify his lyrical ballads. Yeah. But Coleridge's work was more kind of a organic theory on poetic process, which influenced all subsequent critics. You remember that. Even 20th century, from new critics to Russian formalists, were influenced by his idea of and his importance of, looking at poetry as an organic whole. Yeah. In that sense, this line is about on Coleridge, it must have been said. So this is the general political, social and ideological background information which helps you in answering the question, right? So the answer is Coleridge. Next question. Who said of the blank verse, right? This famous line that verse only to the eye. Yeah. He actually quotes from an unnamed critic, but he popularized it. Yeah. One thing we have to remember that out of the 4 important poets, one is a romantic, S.T. Coleridge. The other are, neoclassical. And neoclassical, right? They always believed in, precision. Yeah. So they wrote only in heroic couplet. Yeah. And we should be reminded that Dryden wrote some critical work. Yeah. And there are many works which Dryden wrote in, blank verse. Yeah. So Dryden may not be the person who would be quoting this. Same way, Alexander Pope. We don't have any much great critical work. Alexander Pope is more popular as a critic, and right, more popular as a poet than as a critic. Samuel Johnson is the only option, and here we should be reminded, since we must have studied his lives of the poet, particularly his lives of, life of Cowley and life of Milton. In life of Milton, he criticizes Lycidas, and he was very severely criticizes Lycidas, though he praised Milton's Paradise Lost. So in Lycidas, when he criticizes the meter, At that time, even he brings up the question of blank verse. Yeah. So this is about critical understanding of all these important poets. Make us guess that who could have said such line. Yeah. So the answer is Samuel Johnson. Next one. This is a question where you should have gone through very famous poems of famous poet. All these are from W.B. Yeats' poem, particularly Leda and the Swan. All of us must have read it. And Leda and the Swan, right, which is a kind of an erotic poem, yeah, where mythically, metaphorically deals with that. And very famous line, so mastered by the brute blood of air. This we can very easily fix. And of course, the first line, monument of unaging intellect, sailing to Byzantium. So A3C1. A3C1, there's only one option. Yeah. All other poems we might not have read in our, preparation. So very easily we can conclude answer is C. Next one. This is a question you must have gone through at least, the basic general information about Indian writing in English, right? There's no guesswork you could do, right? You should have known that, right? Lala Lakshmi Kanshi Ram is a character in Chaman Nehal's Azadi. Yeah, you cannot do any kind of a guesswork here. Next one. So look at this, these are some important linguists, right, and important terminologies, right? At least two of this we can, arrive at very easily. One is a Paul Grice. Paul Grice is very popular for his cooperative principle. Please remember that. In the same way, Saussure, when we talk about linguistic science. So in that sense, at least with this, we should try to do this. But even, right, other ideas we might not know. We try to guess and arrive at Ferdinand de Saussure, C3. C3 no, sorry. Yeah, Paul Grice, cooperative principle. 4, Ferdinand de Saussure, 2. Yeah, so we have answer. Answer is in almost second one, right? So second one could be the answer. Yeah, with this we are able to remove. The more if you know about Edward Sapir and Nancy Lorraine, it would be better. But with this, at least two information. With this, we are able to arrive at the answer. Yeah, so answer is B. Next one, question number 6, right? Look at, these are neoclassical writers. All are women writers. So, writers, those who were born sometime around 1770 to 1820. Basic chronological information about them would very easily help us. We must remember that, for example, Anne Bronte, she wrote her novel, very famous novel, Wuthering Height, and, those sisters, those who wrote Wuthering Height and Jane Eyre sometime around 1840s. Yeah, got it. Jane Austen wrote in 1820s. Anne Radcliffe, Fanny Burney, and Maria Edgeworth, all these three are neoclassical writers. Okay, actually their work appeared around 1770s and 80s. Yeah, when we read transitional poets and for example, like Gothic literature around that time. So very easily we can fix it. It must be, yeah, it must be C, D, or E. Yeah. Now out of this, very easily, which one you are going to do? Whether C or D or E. Yeah. So one of the earliest one, right? It could be, it must be Fanny Burney. So when we arrive at Fanny Burney, it must be D, right? And there is no D absent, so very easily you can finish and go, right? But if at all you go with the C and D, but C and D you can go, right? But the third option, it does not match. Yeah, it cannot be Jane Austen, right? Okay, so in this way, we have to leave this option. So there's no CD, then DC, right? So answer must be from this, and since B is not in the correct position, so it must be DCEB, yeah, and A. Finally, and Bronte. Yeah, chronology, basic neoclassical, romantics, transitional, poets and their date of birth and the works, the way it appeared. With this guesswork, very easily, we'll be able to arrive at the answer, right? Next one. It's a research question, Unit 10. It's a very basic, simple question on research methodology. What is research? A research hypothesis, right? Everyone knows that, right? Research hypothesis is a very easy. First one, it cannot be, which is always true. It cannot be the answer. It's a provisional explanation of anything. Yes, provisionally you put some kind of hypothesis. And third point says that it is a disapproval evidence. Yeah. So there's no need for any kind of evidence. So A cannot be answered, C cannot be answered. If A and C is not there, yeah, then what could be the answer? Yeah, it must be B and D, right? A statement which is assumed to be true for the sake of argument. Yeah. hypothesis, we put answers like that. Okay, so the answer is 713. Next one, look at question number 8. Yeah, again here, right, a very important, theater dramatist associated with epic theater, right? Please remember that everyone knows about Bertolt Brecht, right? Epic theater. But we forget that one of his closest friend who was with him was Arnold Braunen, right? And the influence of Arnold Braunen could be seen in Bertolt Brecht's epic theater and its conventions. You know that epic theater, when the way of drama, right? The alienation effect, and how it was done, right? So answer is very easy. B and C, very easily you can arrive. James Saunders, is there actually a James Saunders is an absurd dramatist, right? He cannot be. Yeah, same way Ferdinando Arabel is an Spanish playwright. Yeah. So these are the only two options, right? So when we read about Bertolt Brecht, when we find out from where he got influenced and imbibed this idea of method of epic theater, very easily we can arrive at the answer. Okay. Look at question number 9. Yeah, so that is the answer. Which of these basic statement defines the scope of semiotics, right? Semiotics, the study of sign, okay, or sign system. Yeah, it's a very easy layman's answer, very easily you can arrive. It is not about human sign or non-human sign or a sound system of a language. Sound system of a language, the first one is that is called phonology. Okay, so answer is 2. Yeah. Question number 9. Let's look at. Who among the following of the two great masters of French language that T.S. Eliot contrasts with Dryden and Milton in metaphysical poets? Yeah. And when you have read metaphysical poets in detail, and please remember that we must go through in detail. Superficial knowledge in 2 minutes or 5 minutes, general information about metaphysical poet will not help you. Yeah. We must know whom he quotes. So whom does he quote? He quotes two important, Jean Racine and Charles Baudelaire, right? Actually, he quotes at the end of the at end of the work where he gives them example. He says that the quoting when he quotes Milton and Dryden, and he says that two important, both of them, should have emulated or followed how Racine and Baudelaire followed the soul and described not just the emotions, core emotions of love, but even went beyond that. Okay, so same way William Dryden and Milton should have been like that. Instead of depicting a particular kind of emotions and particular kind of thought, they were not able to combine emotions and intellect, right? So he says that though these two important psychologists were there, but unfortunately the influence could not be seen in Dryden and Milton. Okay, so the answer is B and C, right? Let's look at the next one. Arrange the following authors in chronological order of their birth, right? It's very easiest one, right? Now, I think even a layman's understanding, very easily you can arrive. Oscar Wilde, sometime, born and wrote around 1890s, right? Geoffrey Chaucer, before that, we have Dryden 1660 to 1700. Alexander Pope 1680s to 1745 46. So two important poets are Geoffrey Chaucer or William Langland. Either most of both of them, either one of them should have been the first one. But if you know that, yeah, it must be William Langland, B or C. If you don't believe, okay, if you have a confusion, B or C or C or B. So we have option of CB. So after CB, is it CBA or CBC? CBA, it cannot be CBA, right? A casual general reading of our literature, we would know that. Oscar Wilde, 1890s, sometime 1850s and 60s he was born, right? So it cannot be CBA, yeah, right? So it must be BC, and BC we have only, we have BC option BCD, BCD, two options we got, but the next one E and A, right? E and A, now Alexander Pope and Oscar Wilde, right? So very easily again, you know that it must be B, C, D, A, E, right? Yeah, B, C, D, E, A, right? So B, C, D, E, A, that is William Langland, Geoffrey Chaucer, John Dryden, sometime born around 1630 and died in 1700. Right after that, Alexander Pope, 1688, I think he was born and died in 1745. Okay, so the restoration, neoclassical, like that it proceeds. So very easily you can just by socio-political life, we will be able to do it. Yeah. Look at the next question. Which two of the following books are exploration of art of novel by novelist? Yeah. And if you arrive at, out of these, right, this is one, right, we must know that if at all a general reading of the work, if you do, right, casual outline, it's not, basic information about biographical details, we can arrive at, right? The answer is The Naive and the Sentimental Novelist, written by Omar Pamuk, yeah, and Testament Betrayed. It was written by Milan Kundera. Yeah, only these two are. And the rather visionary companies say actually it's a poetry book. It cannot be book on novel. Yeah. In the same way, a brief compass, right? Brief compass also, yeah, it's a different kind of a book. It was on German literature. Yeah, it was not on this, right? So answer must be B and D. Okay. Let's look at that next question. Who is the author of Fragment 1819, one of the earliest vampire stories of English? Yeah. But if you remember, though we may not remember Fragment, but we must remember, right, Mary Shelley and Frankenstein. Okay. Actually, when Mary Shelley and Frankenstein, when they planned for writing a, gothic story, vampire stories, at that time, even Lord Byron, wrote a fragment. Okay. Yeah. The full title was, yeah, Fragment of a, it was actually a collection, right, known as Mapisa, in which it was written. Got it? So it must be Lord Byron, right? And later, Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein. Bram Stoker cannot be Bram Stoker. Of course, Stoker wrote a Gothic novel, Dracula, later, right, at the end of Victorian age, right, 1890s. P.B. Shelley, of course, he cannot be, right? So it must be Lord Byron. Now, which book of Paradise Lost incorporates the speech rhyme rhythms of Adam and Eve's marital discord, right? Marital quarrel. Simply, we know that, right? In book 9, where the book 9, Paradise Lost, where the fall happens, right? They quarrel, right? The argument, they do the quarrel. So it must be book 9. Okay. Book 4 is where the description of, say, Adam, the beautiful description of Adam is given and described. And 6 and 7 deals with something, the history past where, where Raphael tells Adam the past, what the battle happened in hell and heaven. Okay. All that, the flashback, books, those are. So it cannot be 4, 6, and 7, right? It must be book 9. Let's look at question number 15. Yeah, so these are assertion and two statements are given, right? This question is basically from English in India. Okay, so what is the question, right? Orientalists in British India were not sympathetic towards India's ancient learning. Got it? He says that Asian scholars, they were not giving much importance to India's ancient learning, right? This statement is 100% wrong, right? At the same time, the second statement is correct. William Jones thought that, right, the Indian philosophy and Indian learning was no way inferior to Europe. Okay, so statement 1 is incorrect, statement 2 is true. Yeah, so that is the answer. Let's look at the next, same way, same kind of a question. It is on, I think it is on culture studies, right? Consumption of an outcome of self-interest and a maximization of a personal pleasure, right? And whatever that we consume, he says that, right? All our, FMCG product and whatever we consume, he says that once it reflects one's self outcome and a maximization of personal pleasure. Okay. On the other hand, next one, there are strong correlation between social status and things as a housing style, musical taste, and food preference, right? Okay, it says that when what we consume, right, whatever the product we consume and whatever we do for pleasure activity is a reflection of self-interest. At the same time, whatever one's social status and whatever the products, gadgets he uses, there is a relationship. Yeah, and I think answer is correct. Both statements are true, we can say, right? Next one. Which one of the following essay holds a method? Realism is a complete failure, right? He says then in which essay actually this is mentioned, right? And there's no guesswork you could do. We should have read this work actually. right? It is a very famous essay by Oscar Wilde, The Decay of Lying, right? Where he talks about the process of artistic creation, where he compares romanticism and, and realism. He says that how it's not possible for someone to describe that. Okay, I think sometime around 1890s the work was written, and in a way he justifies Walter Peter and his ideas of aesthetic movement or art for art's sake. Okay, let's look at next one. Which one of the following is a correct about Sassoon's analysis of language? Yeah. So you know that Sassoon's linguistics we must have studied, right? Even at the beginning of structuralism. To understand structuralism, we must have read that. Okay. So the three important concepts which Sassoon talks about. One is langu, right? Langu is a system of language, right? The first one, the point. Got it? Parole. Parole is actually it focus on language as a system of particular time. No, parole is individual speech, individual utterances, right? How an individual speaks, right? Third one, language is a particular instant of speech and writing. No, parole is study of language over. All these are wrong. First one is only correct, right? So very easily we can arrive at the answer. Yeah. Next one. Again, chronological question. Okay, not chronology. Overall, finding out who are metaphysical poets. Even a layman's understanding, very easily we can find out who are. The very first line, okay, two are metaphysical. Third one, Alexander Pope is not metaphysical. Henry Vaughan, John Dryden, John Donne. John Donne is the metaphysical. John Dryden is not. John Donne, Henry Vaughan, Andrew Marvell. Right. Out of these three, all three are metaphysical. Now here we have critics, those who wrote on metaphysical, just to confuse you, right? We have Samuel Johnson who wrote on metaphysical work, T.S. Eliot who wrote on metaphysical, famous essay, Herbert Grayson who published an anthology. So answer is three, right? Next one. Which two of the following poems are Robert Browning? Yeah, a very casual layman's understanding will tell us that Locksley Hall and Lady of a Shalott was written by Tennyson, right? Got it? And when you go for that, when you remove A and C, yeah, what are B and C are there, B and D is there, right? Now you removed. So very easily you can say it must be B and D. And but we must know, we must have read the Pied Piper of Hamelin, right? Remember that throughout this when discussion, I say that we must have read. That means if you prepare very seriously, you should have read all this work. Yeah, you cannot attempt net examination just without even going through the major landmark works. I would suggest all these four poems of Tennyson and Browning, everyone must have read. Yeah, superficial knowledge will definitely won't help you. Yeah, it can give you some marks. Yeah, you can arrive at 30%, 40%, right, or 145, 140. But if you want to score more and master the subject, definitely you should go through thorough detailed preparation is needed. Yeah, so answer is B and D. Let's look at which one of the following journals published articles related to critical theory exclusively, right? We don't have any option except to go with that, right? There's only one, just with the, there are some questions which can be done by answer would be in question itself. Yeah. So we have only one critical work, diacritics. You can just go with this, this much challenge you can take and you can go with that, right? Because we know that all other are, different famous anthologies, right? Okay, for example, Salmagundi, Salmagundi is a a US publication, right? Grant Street is a American journal, right, which was conducted for some time, right? And all these are different works written during different time. Yeah, only Diacritic is a peer review journal, right? Sometime I think it was started in 1970s. Okay, so the answer is Diacritic. With the very title itself, you can arrive at. Next one, question number 22. Which British administrator sought to make everything as English as possible in a country which resembled England in nothing, as recorded by Sir Thomas Munro, right? And if you go with that, answer should be Lord Cornwallis. Yeah, here you cannot do any kind of a guesswork because all of them are Lord, Governor Generals of India. Those who were, for example, Lord Bentinck, yeah, right, Lord Hastings. Only difference is some for example, Lord Bentinck, I think sometime around 1825 to 35, because Bentinck's time this Macaulay's Minutes was published, right? And Lord Hastings, right, Lord Hastings was the first Governor General, okay, around 1770s, right? And later all of them. So we have to read the English language section book, English language portion in detail. Thorough preparation is needed. You cannot go with this, guesswork. Yeah, right. So answer is Lord Cornwallis. Next one, the Duchess of Malfi. uh, is based on Duchess of Malfi is based on Italian novella. Everyone knows that, right? We must have gone through. It cannot be other work, right? So it's a detailed work. We must have prepared very easily. Very easily, you could have answered, right? Next one, which is the correct method, right? Which of the two following strictly follow parameters of documentation prescribed by, MLA handbook, right? All these are questions which we must have gone through, and we must know the technique method. So the answer is A and D, right? Only A and D are correct. Question number 25. This is from criticism, okay? Narratology and post-structuralist thoughts. Very easily we can arrive at the answer, right? I hope even a layman's understanding would tell us that chronotope is, Mikhail Bakhtin talks about chronotope, about the concept of time and space. Biopower, Michel Foucault, right? So very easily you can arrive at. So it should be B1, right? Chronotope, Mikhail Bakhtin, broccolage, Claude Lévi-Strauss, structuralist, core idea of, broccolage, right? Of course, which Derrida and post-structuralism challenges that concept, right? Super reader, Mikhail Rifati, right? So very easily we can arrive at, right? Because Michel Rifati's super reader talks about somewhat, related to semiotics and dealing with, reader response criticism, so ideas, okay? So the answer is A3, B1, C4, D2. Okay. Next one. Look at the question. Arrange the following critical works in the chronological order of publication. Right. So we have Preface to Lyrical Ballads. Right. Sometime written 1798 by William Wordsworth and Coleridge. Defense of Rhyme. Defense of Rhyme was one of the earliest work. If you go with that, Samuel Daniel wrote it. Okay, sometime around 1750. I think it was during Elizabethan time. Okay, got it. I think 1601 or 2 at that time. Rough dates you must remember. Life of Cowley, it is by Dr. Johnson, 1778-79. Okay, in the Lives of the Poet. Frontiers of Criticism. Yeah, again it's a 20th century work. Got it. So very easily you can arrive. It is BCAD, right? So that is the chronology. Let's look at the next question. Arrange the following in chronological order of publication. So we have very important landmark books, right? Rough date is enough to remember. Okay, no one wants you to remember exact date. Please remember that. Advancement of Learning was written by Bacon, right? So you can go with even Bacon wrote between 1590 to 1625, any date. I think sometime around 16 or 3, 4 at the time it was written. Okay. I don't insist that you should know each and every date, but you must remember the decade or the time, the age, the context. Origin of Species, very famous landmark work, right? 1859. Yeah. Same way, Heroes and Hero Worship. It was written around the same time by Carlyle. So he's also contemporary. So B and C must be in the same way, right? Lives of the Poets, just now I told you 1770s. So it must be AD, BC or CB. Yeah. So ADCB, right? So CB or BC, right? Now out of Hero and Hero Worship, and Lives of the, and Origin of Species, right? I think it must be Thomas Carlyle's work on Heroes and Hero Worship. Yeah, he wrote sometime in, I think around the end of 1848, 49 at the time. Yeah, just before Origin of Species, right? So it must be ADCB. Next one. What is the subject of Ian's controversial novel essay in Brothers Karamazov? Right, Brothers Karamazov is a very famous Russian novel. I hope you know that. All of you must have read in your MA. If you have not read, you must master Brothers Karamazov, Anna Karenina, Crime and Punishment and such work, right? Which deals with, right, inner turmoil of the, one of the earliest, in fact, kind of a sermon or a essay. It deals with ecclesiastical codes actually, right? So you should have read the novel. You cannot do any kind of guesswork here, right? We must have read the detailed work thoroughly, right? So next one, Which of the following poem by Philip Larkin deals with the trauma of a rape victim who says, "Even so distant, I can taste the grief," right? This is actually from his poem, Deception, right? And remember that, yeah, there will be around 10 to 15 questions, which will be very difficult, right? And they won't give you very famous landmark lines. Sometimes difficult question they will give you, they really want you to find out, okay? And these are one such question. We should have read the work and memorized the important line. Got it? It's from the poem Deception. Yeah. Next one. Which of two of the following aspects are to be scrupulously followed to avoid the trap of plagiarism? Right? And everyone knows that, right? We have to acknowledge, we have to give the citation, right? P and C, right? To avoid plagiarism. We should not fall into that trap. Next one. Which among the following wrote Mepisa, a long narrative poem about 17th century military leader of Ukraine? Right? Just now I told you it was work by Lord Byron. Okay. So it's a very easier one. Just, these are the minor works of Byron. So general information that this was written by Byron would enough help us doing this. Okay. Next one. To which mythological character is Faustus compared in the prologue to in the prologue of Dr. Faustus, right? And we know the story of Dr. Faustus. We must have read it. It is the story of Icarus. Okay, Icarus and Daedalus, right? Okay, that is what it deals with. Yeah, not the other mythical characters. Yeah, so we know that, right? It's a very easier one. Got it? Next question. Which among the following novel include a questionnaire for the reader such as, do you like the story so far? Yes or no? The very characteristic of this question, there is a novel in such questions are there, right? It must be postmodern novel. Got it? And the options they are given, yeah, though John Fawkes wrote a very famous postmodern novel, French Lieutenant's Women, but this work is not there, right? But we have very important postmodern work. One of the landmark work is Waterland, very famous work. The next one is Snow White, that is also postmodern work. And the third one is If on a Winter's Night a Traveler by Italo Calvino. That is also a postmodern work, right? But this question is actually, this kind of, narrative, actually you find asking question. If you look at it, must be from Snow White. Snow White was originally written for children's story, right? Later he expanded and converted into a postmodern work. There only we find such, characteristics of asking question, right? Reminding the reader that you are, how your work is in progress and how your reading is going through. Yeah, it was sometime written in 1890-91, I guess. Okay, let's look at next question. You have to do the match the following. This is from culture studies, right? We may not know all the answers, but I think one of these answers everyone should know, right? Okay, which is a very famous one. John Fiske's work, Understanding Popular Culture, right? John Fiske's B3. And when we are able to fix B3, I think very easily you can arrive at the answer, right? B3, you're sure, because it deals with how the television works, right? How the television works, or at least the next should be pretty Baudelaire, right? Baudelaire's work where he talks about distinction. So these two would make you arrive at, yeah. So our basic general, will help you. At least one or two options we must be able to know that, right? And we must be able to recollect every idea during this process. Next one, right? So answer is 3. Question number 35, right? So 35 deals with, some of these landmark, very famous novels, right? And a casual, if you are an avid reader, you must be knowing some of the very well-known novels, okay? One of the famous novel is Thomas Pynchon's novel, V. Yeah, Thomas Pynchon's novel, who wrote V. Got it? So we have two options of, V. So, right? Another one is, right, Anthony Burgess, right? Anthony Burgess wrote, M slash F, right? Actually, it's an expansion of a very obese, a kind of a, word which is, which should not be spoken here. He just wanted to make it like that. That's why he wrote M and F, right? And that was sometime written in 1970s. Got it? Okay, right? So answer must be 2, A2, B3, C4, and D1, right? So at least two options will definitely help us in arriving at the answer. Next one. which according to Thomas Hobbes is the only science God has bestowed on mankind that informs the structure of his monumental work and Leviathan, right? And I think here Thomas Hobbes actually mentions only work, accordingly he mentioned what was geometry, right? And it's a factual question we should have prepared, right? You cannot do guesswork here. Next one. The poetry, according to such Philip Sidney's of three kind, they are, right? And the answer is very well known that Philip Sidney wrote during during the time of what it is called Elizabethan time. Yeah. So one thing is it cannot be classical, romantic, or neoclassical, right? Neoclassical did not even arrive. Okay. Philosophical, imaginative, narrative, right? Narrative, I don't think you would be expressing this again. Same way, religious, dramatic, and romantic. You would not be mentioning, romantic. So he mentions three type of poetry. So that is religious, philosophical, and imaginative. Got it? So here, even just general information and common guesswork and common using some common sense, we can arrive at the answer, right? Narrative poetry and importance of narrative poetry was always there. Okay, narrating stories. Okay, adventurous like and adventures of knights and others. Got it? But but the question was right, not the type of narration at the time, at the time of what it is called Elizabethan time, right? Poetry according to yeah, so the answer is religious, philosophical, and imaginative. Right. Next is question on structuralism. Okay, this is a typical, from Unit 9 question. It asks the core idea of structuralism. Right. First one, how to eliminate that. Structuralism is concerned with signs and signification. Right. So we know that yes, structuralism deals with signs and signification. Yes. Second one, structuralist theory consider only verbal convention and codes, right? Do we consider only verbal words? What about signs, symbols, pictures, movies, films? No. So second point is wrong. Third point, structuralism began in the works of Derrida. No, right? Here itself we can put an end to that, right? It cannot be, right? Structuralism began in anthropology by Claude Lévi-Strauss and later, and of course, he was influenced by Saussure, right? Fourth one, structuralism challenges the long-standing belief that literature reflects a given reality. Of course, yes, it is the core idea. All signs are arbitrary, but without them, we cannot comprehend reality, right? So that is also correct. Signs, all the signs have arbitrary. There is no relationship between sign and the symbol, but we have created a structure like that. Okay, so the option A, D, and E, right? A, D, and E are correct. Yeah. These kind of questions are known as, retaining idea question, where they test your in-depth knowledge. Okay, so superficial knowledge will not help you. So you will find around 15 to 20, 25 questions where thorough preparation, thorough in-depth knowledge is required. Next one. Which two rivers are mentioned? Right? Casual, I hope everyone must have read the poem, and we know that it is the rivers, the Ganges and Humber, right? These two names are mentioned in to his poem, to his coy mistress. Everyone should know about this. There should not be any doubt on that, right? So A and C. Next, which two of the following are the titles of a section of Thomas De Quincey's English Mail Coach, right? And the answer is The Vision of Sudden Death and The Glory of Motion. Yeah, so this is also, you cannot do any kind of a guesswork. You should have prepared, right? So thorough preparation is needed, right? Someone mentioned in, when I, and analyze the question paper that, some overall the questions were easier. You could see that out of 40, around 15 to 20 questions were almost, chronological one. General basic knowledge is enough, okay? But if you don't prepare anything, then every exam, every question paper would appear very difficult for you. Okay, so for these essays, you must have prepared. Thorough preparation is needed. Question number 41. The lives of which of the following writers have been subject matter of novel by Anthony Burgess? Right? Actually, it deals with, he wrote a two novel based on many writers. Okay, many important writers he mentioned in that. Right? Actually, he wrote a two novel. Right? One is, on Marlowe and another on Keats. Yeah. So you must remember that Keats, he wrote a novel, almost title is ABBA, ABBA, one of the famous rhyme schemes of John Keats, right? And another one he wrote is a Dead Man in Deception, right? Debt 4, sometime in 1993. Yeah. So this is general, basic outline study of Anthony Burgess would definitely help us. Okay. He was a 20th century, important novelist. Okay. Important 20th century British novelist. So his important novels and the names itself will help us. Like, for example, we remember the major poems of Keats, major poems of William Wordsworth, and major works of Shakespeare, right? I hope we remember all the 37 names of William Shakespeare's work, okay? Same way, we have to master all these also. Next one. In which of the, let's look at the question. In which of the Bog poem, does Simasini speak about perishable treasure of a body, murdered, forgotten, nameless, terrible? Yeah. And this also he talks about in a poem. Yeah. And it's not a very famous line. Yeah. Sometime I think it's a kind of a sonnet, around 14-line poem. The 11th line, the title of the poem is Strange Fruit. Yeah. That is the question. Look at next question. Which two of the following works does Walter Peter regard as an example of great art in his style, in his work style? Right? It's a Renaissance work. Okay, it's a Renaissance work, and it deals with, it's a work on aesthetic movement around 1870s, 1880s. It was written. Yeah. So in that work, what are the two important work he mentions? He mentioned many important work. Okay. For example, in fact, if you look at, he mentions even Paradise Lost, English Bible also. In addition to that, he mentions Divine Comedy and Les Miserables. Yeah, right. He does not mention, Faust, okay, or he does not mention Iliad, right? So the general outline of Walter Peter and his contribution will help us arrive at this answer. Okay, so answer is B and C. Let's look at question number 44. Right, on December 11th, 1823, Raja Ram Mohan Roy addressed a letter to British authority which pleaded for modern Western education and is considered historically important for introduction of English education in India. Right, and it's a general knowledge, I hope. Right, even a casual reading of general newspaper will help you. Right, and in the last, last 5 to 6 years, everyone talked about this. Right, and whenever we talk about English language and its importance when it was introduced by Minutes of the Minute, by Macaulay in 1835, we are reminded of Roy, right, when he wrote the letter, right, and this was written to a Secretary of Education, okay, at the time, and it was Lord Amherst, right, Lord Amherst. Please remember that he was a Secretary of the Board of Education at the time, right? So this letter was written to him. It's a factual question we have to memorize. What I'm saying is, even with a general understanding of our newspaper reading and general GK history, going through history also will help us arriving at this answer, right? Next, question number 45. Who among the following coined the dictum, medium is the message? And it's a very important line, okay? And since we are going to deal with culture study, I hope all of you must be concentrating. Culture, you should not imagine something else. You must concentrate on television, right? Even television and advertisements as a media, right? And this line was said by very famously by Marshall McLuhan, right? Sometime in 1964, right? Where he mentioned that the medium is the message, right? He says that the content is not important. Same content can be expressed in film, in television, in news channel, in a reality show. Yeah, you just take, right? Or in a documentary, etc., etc. Same sentimental ideas, right? So the medium plays a very important role. Same content can be expressed through different, different medium, right? So it's a very important one as far as culture studies are concerned. Please memorize this line. Okay, next question number 46. Which one of the following assumption best express the position of post-structuralist criticism? They are asking the core idea of post-structuralism, right? And I hope all of you must have prepared post-structuralism, right? We must be master the subject. Definite structure underline empirical events. No, that cannot be that, right? Language is representational. No, that also post-structuralists they defy that. Apprehension of reality is a construct, right? And knowledge operates according to procedure that are axiomatic. No, they question the very definition of knowledge. So they question the very apprehension of reality, saying that the very apprehension or the very concept of reality is a physically constructed one. Yeah, post-structuralists challenge the very notion and how they pinpoint the hegemonic power over the reality, right? He says that the assumption of reality is a construction, right? Whether the assumption of reality or apprehension of reality or whatever the aspects of reality are, these are, these are constructed through those, interplay of those signs, right? And when we discard that, when we, dismantle those, structures, we will not have anything. Yeah, that is the core idea. He says that we can never arrive at a reality, right? Okay, it is only constructed reality or constructed imaginative, okay, through that is imaginative ideas and concepts created through the language, right? And when you discard that, when you deconstruct it, it falls apart, right? So instead of asking a simple question, they have given a very different word. Okay, instead of saying that the picture of reality, okay, apprehension of reality, that is how you look at reality. Okay, so that is the core one. Next question, 47. According to this essay, civil disobedience, right? You remember that, for civil disobedience, Thoreau was sent to jail. And what did he learn from there, right? The first thing is he says that he concluded that state is ultimately weak, right? And of course, we can agree with that, right? They sent him to jail and they were not able to break his, his vow. Second, he realized that captivity inspires courage. No, right? He did not say that. He realized that neighbors are only friends during good times. Yes, he realized that. He concluded that captivity brings wisdom about human affairs. No, right? We all would believe that, oh, captivity brings about that. He did not believe in that, right? Okay, because he knew that already, he just wanted to experiment. And later we know that he spent his time in jail, in a Walden Pond forest, right? He almost lived like a beast, right? So answer is only, that is A and C are correct. Okay, all are wrongs, right? And you need to study American literature, civil, disobedience, Walden Pond, and such as this. Thorough preparation is needed. Yeah. According to this, right? So this is the question, right? Next one. Arrange the following plays in their chronological order. Yeah, and very easily they are given, right? So we have one, Shakespeare's play, right? We know that Shakespeare died in 1612. We have Spanish tragedy before him. It was, Thomas Pitt, yeah, around 1580s. So 1580 it must be C, right? Shakespeare, it must be Cymbeline, right? 1610, 1611. Then comes, Country Wife, okay, very famous restoration comedy, right? Most, in fact, the first famous restoration comedy, 1675. And Rivals, almost later, 100 years later, anti-sentimental comedy, right? 1775. Okay, so it must be CBAD. Very easily, just chronological basic general information would have helped you, right? That's why you must master ideological, political, and social background. Yeah. Next one, 49. Again, same kind of a question. Arrange the following place in the correct chronology. We know All for Love, written by Dryden. All for Love, and here the, out of four, School for Scandal is an anti-sentimental comedy. Okay, like that of, for example, Three Stoops to Conquer or The Rivals. Okay, that is 1775. So one thing is sure, C should be the last one, right? And I hope very easily you can find the answer. Now see, they have given only one, but very easily you can answer. Just now I told you Country Wife, 1775. School for Scandals, sorry, Country Wife, 1675. School for Scandals, 1775. Venice Preserved. It's this, the Venice Preserved is also a restoration comedy, sometime around 1680. And Love for Love, Dryden's famous play, 1677. Right? So when you are sure about the School for Scandal, very easily you can arrive, must be B. Okay, right. Let's look at the question number 50, right? The introduction of English in India was primarily for the benefit and consolidation of British power, right? This is a fact. We all know that. That's the main reason they introduced. Second one, English catered to the social and economic aspiration of emerging middle class and urban elite in India. Assertion is correct, but reason is wrong during at that time. Okay. Today we can say that yes, today we as a middle class, we emerge and we go after economic aspiration and other aspect, elite, elites in India, right? They go for that English language will bring about everything, right? But during British time, it was not. So assertion A is correct, assertion B is wrong. This is from English in India topic. Okay. So that is about, right? So these are the first 50 questions, right? So you can see in a second video, question number 51 to 100. Okay, so you can this is the kind of a, what could have, how we could have attempted the exam, what, how we should attend, or how our mind should work during those 3 hours. Okay, what kind of a method, technique, tips, right, strategies we use, that is what, okay, is explained. You can continue and watch the remaining in the next slide. Okay, thank you.